Okay, let's begin. Yohanan's not here either. I don't know. Okay, Parshas Vayeshev, the second Aliyah, and I've titled it Yosef sent into the valley of trouble. Yosef sent into the valley of trouble. Let's take a look at the text. Page 202, Sheni, it's Lamed Zayin, Psuk, it starts with Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayomer Yisrael lo Yosef, halo achecha ro'im b'Shechem, l'cha v'shlachacha alehem, vayomer lo hinei. So Yisrael, Yaakov turns to his son Yosef, and he says to him, aren't your brothers with the sheep in Shechem? Why don't you go and find them? And he answers, what is Yosef's response? Hineni, here I am. I'm ready to do whatever you want, Dad. Pasuk Yudal. Vayomer lo, lech na re'eya shlom achecha v'shlom atzon, v'ashiveni davor. Oh, great, he says. Yaakov saying to Yosef, therefore go and see how your brothers are doing, how the sheep are faring, and return to me a report. And he sent him from the depths of Hebron, and he arrived at Shechem. Or he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he arrived at Shechem. And so he found, a man discovered him. A man found him. And he was lost in the field, right? Yaakov was lost in the Yosef was lost in the field. And this man, no name, right? Ish, that's all. This anonymous person says to Yosef, what are you searching for? What are you looking for? Vayomer, and Yosef answers, Es achai anochi mevakesh. I am looking for my brothers. I'm searching for my brothers. Hagido noli efohem roim. Please tell me where are they? Where are they tending the sheep? Vayomer, and pasuk Zayin. Vayomer haish, and this man says, this anonymous person says, Nasumi zeh ki shamati omrim nelchad dosayna. Vayilch Yosef acharecha vayimsaim b'dosa. The man said, they've journeyed on from here, for I heard them saying, let us go to Datan. They're not here. I overheard that they're going to Dotan. So Yosef went after his brothers in Dotan. Okay. Vayiru osam meirachok, and they saw him from afar. Uveterem yikrav aleim vaisnakalu oso lahamiso. And even before he approached them, they conspired against him to kill him. That's how the enmity was so great. Vayomru ish el achiv, one said to the other, Hinei bal hachalamot alazeba. Look who's coming. The Baal HaChalamot. What is the Baal HaChalamot? The Baal HaChalamot, he translates this as the dreamer. No, the Baal. What does Baal mean? The one who owns his dreams. Important statement. Important. Good morning. This is what happened yesterday when I did my Gemara Shir, coughing. I apologize, but we'll get through this. The atap. Oh no, I won't be able to give the shir. Yeah, but thank you. I appreciate. Nothing seems to help until this goes away. That's what the doctor said. Okay. And so they said one to another, let's kill him. Let's throw him into one of the pits. And we'll say our report will be a wild beast ate him, right? And then we'll see what happened to the owner of the dreams, how in control he is of his dreams, right? Reuven heard this, and Reuven said, oh no. And he rescued him from their hands. We will not strike him mortally. We will not kill him. Vayomer alehem Reuven al tishbechu dam ashlichu oto la'bor hazeh asher b'midbar v'yad al tishlichu bo leman hatzil oto miyadam la'shivo elaviv. And Reuven said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit, into the wilderness, but lay no hand on him. So he throws him into the pit, right? Intending, now we're told what's Reuven's mindset. He intended to rescue him from their hand, to return him to his father, to their right, he's going to be returned to their father. Okay. That's where I want to end for this morning. That's the pasuk that we will end with. Okay. Well, no, I really actually want to go till Pasuk Yud Ches. Till Pasuk Yud Ches. I apologize. Vayomer Yisrael lo Yosef, halo achecha ro'im whoops.
Yeah.
We're fine. Okay, I got lost. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we have the story of Yosef being sent by his father into the valley of trouble, right? So opening observation, what is the Rav? How does the Rav understand this whole aliyah? The Rav wants to understand, why is Yaakov thinking that he should send Yosef to his brothers? Yaakov knew there was enmity between the brothers. He knew this was the most dangerous possible mission. How would he send his son, Yosef, who he loved more than anyone else, into the lion's den? That's the question that Rav wants to understand. What is Yosef? What's Yaakov thinking? When you read the story, you have to wonder, what's Yaakov thinking? That's question one. So what motivates Yaakov? Also, the Rav probes the Torah text to try to figure out what is causing this enmity. Is it just jealousy? Is that what's happening? Is it just between the brothers jealousy that they want to kill him? Or why can't they really see Yosef for whom he is? And they can't. And so the Rav wants to probe the text. Do we have some hints within the text giving us a better insight into their mindset? So two questions, really mindset questions. What's motivating Yaakov to send his beloved son Yosef into the lion's nest? And number two, what is motivating Yosef's brothers? That they are so driven that even before he arrives, they see him merachok from a distance, and they're already planning his death. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's go back and let's see what we got. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayomer Yisrael Yosef halo achecha ro'im b'Shechem lecha v'shlocha aleim v'yomer lo hineni. Right? So he says, go find your brothers. And then he says, continues on, Vayomer lo lech na re'ei es shlom achecha v'shlom atzon v'ashideni davar. And I want you to bring back a report and tell me how everybody's doing. Next words are very important. Vayishlachehu me'emek Chevron vayavo Shchema. And he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. He sent him from the valley of Hebron. So Rashi, the Rav quotes Rashi, the famous Rashi. Rashi says, excuse me, read the Rashi, it's right here on the page. Yud Dalet, Vahalo Hebron Bahar. Excuse me, how can the Torah say Hebron? Anybody's ever been to Hebron knows it's not in a valley. It's not in a valley. You can find from Yerushalayim, you're going up and down hills, up and down hills. If you leave Beit Lechem and onto the Hebron, you're going up and down hills. And Hebron is perched on a top of a hill. It's not in a valley. So how can you say, so he sent him from the valley of Hebron, right? So what does Rashi say? Elo me'etza amuka shel oto tzadik hakavur b'Hebron. He's giving, what is it referring to? It's referring to the Eitzah, the profound counsel of whom? The one who's buried in Hebron. The Emek Hebron is not referring to the description of Hebron in a mountain, in a valley. Hebron, we all understand, is not in a valley. Hebron is on a hilltop. So therefore, what is it referring to? The profound counsel of the one who's buried. Well, if you're buried, where are you? You're below, you're subterranean. It's referring to the one who's in the valley of Hebron, if you will. Who's in the valley of Hebron? Avram. Avram is buried in Marat HaMachpelah. He's not on top of the hill. He's buried into the, in other words, it's an allusion to the one who's buried in the ground, right? And it's Eitzah Amuka, he calls it, the profound counsel of the one who is buried and the one who is in the valley. It's an allusion to whom? It's an allusion to Abraham. What does Abraham have to do with this story? Well, Abraham had a dream. He had a prophecy. back in Lech Lecha. What was the prophecy? It was called Brit Ben Habitarim, the covenant between the pieces. What was that Brit? What was that covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed to Abraham? He said in that covenant that his descendants, you, Abraham, your descendants are going to go where? Your descendants are going to go into a foreign land and become slaves in a foreign land. Oh, who's that? Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, somewhere along the line, your descendants are going to go to a land that they don't know, which is, of course, Egypt, right? So in other words, by referring to Hebron as situated in the valley, the Torah text, Rabbi Soloveitchik notes, is telling us that Yaakov was not acting on his own. Remember, the first question the Rav wants to understand is what motivated Yaakov to do this? Yaakov is not acting on his own. He's acting, if you will, he's acting by counsel of the one who's buried in Hebron. And what's the counsel of the one who's buried in Hebron? The Brit Ben Habtarim. It wasn't logical at all, and it wasn't Yaakov's logic that's dictating what's occurring right now. Rather, it's something deeply hidden. Deep, Eitz Amuka means deeply hidden. What do you mean deeply hidden? It's not in Yaakov's control. Yaakov is not playing with his, he doesn't have the control. He's not holding the steering wheel. Not at all. He's not driving the car. Not at all. It's someone subterranean, if you will, that's driving the car. It's totally someone else that's driving the car. Who is it? So what does Rashi say? Chazal say it's Avraham. What do you mean it's Avraham? Avraham had a nevuah called the Brit Ben Habtarim, the covenant of the parts where they were told that he was given a nevuah, he was given a prophecy that what's going to happen. Your descendants are going to go and be enslaved in a land that they do not know, right? So what is happening, ladies? What's happening? That's all beginning. Why, remember, the Rav asked, why, if you will, is Yaakov doing something so illogical, so crazy? You don't send your most beloved son into a lion's den when you know he might not very well come back unscathed at best. Why is he doing it? No, the binding of Isaac, yeah, Abraham is in control. Abraham decides what he's doing. Here, Yaakov is not in control. Yaakov's not calling the shots at all. That's what Chazal is explaining, and that's what the Rav is quoting. Why, again, go back to the question. Why is Hebron called a valley when it's not a valley? Any first grader knows that if he lives in Israel and he knows the geography of Eretz Yisrael. He knows Hebron is on a hill. Oh no, it's an allusion to. It's an allusion to what? The control here is coming from the valley of Marat HaMachpelah. Oh, it's coming from, what does that mean? The Brit Ben Habtarim. Everything is unfolding now beyond the control of Yaakov. Okay? This has to be what the Torah means, argues Chazal, because Yaakov totally understood that sending his beloved son to his brothers was idiotic. It was the worst idea you could come up with, right? To put it bluntly, it's an illogical move, and Yaakov's not illogical. But when you're not in control and you're not the one running like I say, holding onto the steering wheel and driving the car, what happens? Sometimes you realize in life that you're not the one who's driving the car, right? You realize that somebody else is driving the car. I saw that within my own life at different times. You're just not driving the car. Let me give you an example of literally driving the car where I lived. When Chama and I were on our honeymoon 38 years ago, will be January 8th, will be 38, Baruch Hashem. So so we got married in January 1985, and then we came here for our honeymoon in July 1985. And I was and we were staying at the other side of town where Chama's aunt and uncle lived at the time. and Zichrono Livracha, David Edelman and Chani, may she live a long life. And they were living on Laurel, right? And we were looking, a Sunday morning, it was Shiva Sabbatamos, and I took my rented car. Muhammad wasn't with me. I took my rented car. It was pre-telephones, Google Maps, pre-Waze. So you have to figure out, I remember Beth Jacob is on this side of town. We were staying on the other side. I wanted to see the famous Beth Jacob. So I'm drive down the street and I don't turn on Olympic, I turn on Pico. I go La Cienega to Pico and I'm coming down the street and what do I see? I don't find Beth Jacob. What do I find? I see a Young Israel of Century City. That Shabbos, I was told about Young Israel of Century City. That Shabbos, I was told by Mr. Pro, may you rest in peace, at Shari Tefillah, he tells me, young man, there's a shul on the other side of town looking for a rabbi. I was looking for Beth Jacob, who was driving the car. Okay? You know, who's driving the car? I wasn't driving the car. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was driving the car. It was clear to me later, I came home, it's a long story short. And I turned to Rechama and she turned to my uncle, and that's how slowly but surely all of the wheels were put into motion and we were brought to LA. Sometimes you're not in control. That's exactly when I read this, I said, oh, I get it. Sometimes Yaakov's not in control. What's happening here, the Torah is telling us, is that the divine providence caused Yaakov to act as HaKadosh Baruch Hu determined how the Bris Ben Habsarim was going to unfold. With Yosef being sent to find his brothers, Jewish destiny was now unfolding. Jewish destiny was unfolding as the prophecy that Avraham had received back in Parshas Lech Lecha had told him. It's now all starting to be implemented. The chain of events, that's why Chazal say, this story of Yosef, right, being sold, going to find his brothers, and everything that's now going to happen is being sold into slavery, is being eventually becoming viceroy, right? The brothers coming down to buy food. All of that, Chazal say, was, quote unquote, the light of the King Messiah. Kadosh Baruch Hu was creating the light of the King Messiah. What do we mean by that? The chain of events would stimulate eventually, it hasn't yet happened, the Mashiach himself coming. In other words, Jewish destiny is beginning to unfold because Yaakov sent his son Yosef into the lion's den, right? Okay. The Rav also understood.
Yeah. It's a very quick question. Was Yaakov aware of this destiny that we were supposed to go down to Mitzrayim?
He knew that his father had a nevuah.
That's what I'm looking for.
He knew that his father had a nevuah. You would assume, yeah. The Bris Ben Absarim was told to Yitzchak, was told to Yaakov 100%. You could assume that 100%. Yes.
Why is one thing here that I don't understand? It says mechavesh lechafa. It's if you go, I will send you. Then you go. You don't walk before I send you for the mission. I don't understand the order of those two.
No, very nicely. If you're not in control and it's destiny unfolding, lecha vesh lachacha, you think you're in control. I'm not. He's not. You're going, but I'm sending you. I'm not really sending you. Somebody else is sending you. Who is sending you? Who's sending you? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Exactly. Okay. The Rav also understood the phrase of Emek Chevron in a totally different. So we have possibility one, right? That he's not in control. Emek Chevron means the one who's buried subterranean in Chevron. It's all Abraham's prophecy that's happening here. Okay. But the Rav also understood this phrase, Emek Chevron, in a totally different way. And it deserves our attention. It really does. It's a beautiful interpretation as well. He suggested it can mean that Yaakov didn't simply send Yosef, Yosef on a mission. Rather, it is giving us a description of how Yaakov and Yosef parted. We're giving a painting of the entire story in front of us. We're seeing a beautiful painting of the entire story. What we're being told is that Yaakov accompanied Yosef down the hill. Yosef was sent by Yaakov only when Yaakov and Yosef arrived in the Amek, in the valley. If you're on a hill and you're leaving, what do you have to do? You have to descend the mountain. Eventually, you're going to get to the Amek. You're going to get to the valley. Yosef was accompanied by Yaakov from where? From the valley. Yaakov didn't say in the Hebron. Yaakov did not, on the top of the mountain in his house, he didn't tell Yosef, okay, you're going. Yeah, he said, come on, Yosef, I want to come, join me. We're walking, we're going to take a spatzir today. We're going to take a walk. So they went down to the valley. Then, and only then, did Yaakov turn to Yosef and say, what? Now go find your brothers. Interesting. Why? Why is this so important? What we are being told, we're being told is a picture of what is happening here. The Rav says we must pay attention to the great symbolism that Hashem orchestrated in the farewell of Yaakov and Yosef at this moment. And if we really want to sense the moment, we have to pay close attention to the wording of the Torah. Yaakov knew very well that that Yosef's brothers hated Yosef. So he knew very well that this was not a smart thing. Yaakov wasn't an idiot who didn't understand the human dynamic that existed between the brothers. He knew very well that there was no love lost, to say the least. He understood this. He knew very well that they held great hostility towards Yosef. If this is so, to send Yosef to find out about their well-being was a very foolish move, as we've noted, right? But the point being made here is that when one is not in control of his actions, they are being controlled by the divine, one isn't able to account for the consequences that are going to unfold. If you're not in control, you can't figure out the consequences. Yaakov had no idea that this would be the last time that he would see Yosef for 22 years. When he kissed goodbye, did he know that this was going to be the last time he's going to see Yosef? He had no idea. He had no inclination that Yosef was going to be going down to Egypt. Where did he think he was going? To Shem. Go find your brothers in Shem. He had no idea that he was not going to Shem. Yaakov is not in control. And this is what the Valley of Hebron means. In other words, when one stands on a mountain, how's your vision? Excellent. You see the entire topography of the entire area, correct? When we stand here up on the second floor, we see the entire Pico in front of us. Now go downstairs and stand at the corner. You see the entire Pico in front of you? No. When you're down in the valley, what do you see? A blurred, limited vision. Oh, now understand what shot. Yaakov went down from the mountain of Hebron with his son. At the top, he had great vision, but that's not where he was talking to him. Where does he talk to him? He walks down to the valley. He thinks he sees, he doesn't see anything. He sees very limited. You only see that which is right in front of you. On the top of the mountain, he would have seen a great vision. On the bottom of the mountain, the Emek Hebron, he sees a very limited vision. So when Yaakov is sending Yosef to his brothers, does he have a full vision of this? Not at all. He has no vision whatsoever. He has a very limited vision. Maybe that's shot when the vision is limited. That is what the Emek Hebron is teaching us. So two possibilities, right? Rashi said, the Rav quoted Rashi, that the first shot is, what does Emek Hebron mean? From Avraham, the one buried in Hebron. He's the one, his priest been up. So what's the second shot? The second shot is Yaakov walked Yosef down to the valley and then sent him off from the bottom, meaning that Yaakov had no idea what was happening. What's the mindset of Yaakov? Totally blurred. He just thinks he's sending him off to go find his brothers, right? Go find your brothers, because who's in control? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? Hold off with the questions so that we'll just move on a little. Okay. Next pasuk. And a man, who's the man? Anonymous man. I want you to now follow this, and you tell me how many times there's a superfluous word ish in this story. And a man found him, right? An anonymous man, while he was wandering in the field. And this man asked him, Mativakesh, what are you looking for? Right? And the man says, they traveled on to Dotana, right? I overheard that they went to Dotana. How many times is the ish? 3 times it's there, but how many times it's superfluous? Twice. You didn't need the ish you see in this pasuk, that it's totally superfluous, right? In two different places. So the questions abound when you read this story. Calling him an anonymous man. He remains anonymous without any name identifying. You never know who this man is. The anonymity makes us pose numerous questions. Question 1, who was he? Please tell me, who is this ish? Number 2, what would be question number 2? Why did he approach Yosef? Why does he stop? I mean, an anonymous person, why does he stop Yosef? Question number 3, why does the Torah repeat the noun ish 2 more times, each when it appears to be superfluous? Question number 4, what is the Torah trying to teach us by using such a title for this anonymous person? Ish. What is it trying to teach us? But by using the name Ish, we are being told neither Yaakov nor Yosef is in control, which leads us what? To more questions. Number 5, we must wonder, how did this unnamed man approach Yosef and suggest he could help him? How does an unidentified man approach Yosef? Who would have had such temerity to come over and say, hey, I need help? Who are you? What? And number 6 or 7, why would Yosef confide in a totally unidentified stranger? Why would you even say a word to an unidentified? You don't even know who this man is. And we must also wonder, how could the man relate to Yosef's response? Yosef answered, what are you looking for? What did he say? I am looking for my brothers. And he says, oh, your brothers? Sure. They're the 10 people he met before. How did he know that the 10 people that he met before are his brothers? How was he able to answer the question? You're looking for your brothers. Oh, those are the 10 people I met before. How do you know that? And finally, isn't it a strange coincidence that Ish knew where the brothers were located? How did he know where the brothers were located? How did he know that everything he knows? Who is this Ish? The Rav answers all of these questions by noting the Torah uses the name Ish and repeats it twice, where it's totally unwanted and unneeded, to teach us an important lesson. The Ish in this story is not just another human being. He's not a man. The Ish is an angel who watches over Jewish destiny. That's the Ish. The Ish doesn't mean a human being. It means the angel who watches over Jewish history. That's what the Ish means. And that's why you're using an anonymous name, and you'll never know who the identity is, because it's an allusion to the one who's in charge of Jewish history. He is the shaliach, he is the messenger of Hashem, guiding the events as they need to happen. That's what the Ish is doing. Okay, in other words, he isn't just meeting a man named Yosef. Rather, Yosef, right? The Ish is not just meeting a man named Yosef. Yosef, rather, is the one who is going to implement and begin the prophecy of the Bris Ben Habsarim. So the Ish is the Shaliach Hashem, who's going to help Yosef literally implement the Bris Ben Habsarim without Yosef realizing it. Certainly Yaakov didn't realize it. In other words, Yosef's drama that we're reading about, and it's a fascinating story. It always is. It's one of the most dramatic stories in Tanakh. Yosef's drama isn't simply a story about a 17-year-old young lad lost in the field looking for his brothers, right? It's way more than that. What is happening here? It is more complex, more puzzling, more awesome than the text would ever allude to when you just read this quickly as a text. No, by telling me ish and not identifying it, by repeating that ish when you don't need it, what are you being told? This is a power way beyond man's control. It's a Shaliach Hashem that is guiding the whole story. In other words, by using this anonymous ish, the Torah is foreshadowing the entire story of Jewish destiny, right? That's exactly what is happening. Yosef hesitantly surrenders to this ish. It doesn't make sense. Why would he say, if somebody comes up to a stranger, we taught our kids from day one, you don't talk to strangers. A stranger comes and asks you a question, what do? You don't answer, you walk away from them. Hey, Yosef knew that, but Yosef answers because Yosef surrenders to the ish. He's surrendering to his destiny. That's exactly what he's doing. It is the ish who's responsible for sending Yosef to Dotan. How did he do that? How did he know? So by doing so, he sealed the fate of Yaakov's household going down to Egypt, right? We know the story very well. But by Yosef being sold into Egypt gets the whole household of Yaakov down to Egypt, and the Avdus begins, and our destiny unfolds. Now, the Rav makes a very important and crucial observation that you must remember as you read this story of Yosef. Everyone, the Rav says, everyone, capital everyone, who was involved in the Yosef story acted compulsively. Everyone acted compulsively, not because they knew what their actions were going to produce, just the opposite, not at all. They acted compulsively because they were not in control. They did not act because they knew their actions were sound and good. They had no idea what they were doing. What's compulsive mean? You don't have an idea of what you're doing. You act compulsively. You don't know if it's good or you know if it's bad. You act. They were rather forced by the sheer impact of Jewish destiny as it was unfolding because God had planned it that way. This whole story, everyone involved in the Yosef story, Yaakov bringing him down the mountain, right? Acted compulsively. Yosef acts compulsively. How does he act compulsively? To the ish, he should never have trusted this man. He should never have spoken to this man. He acts compulsively. Oh, and the brothers act compulsively, don't they? Everybody's acting compulsively. Even Reuven, who acts to a certain degree. What's Reuven's actions that's compulsive? He doesn't return in time to find his brother to save him. Why doesn't he return in time? Right? He took him away from his brothers that they shouldn't kill him, but he acts compulsively. Linda's asking, wasn't Yosef lost? Yes, Yosef is lost 100%. That 100%, he's lost, but he shouldn't have spoken to. Who should he not have spoken to? A stranger. It doesn't make sense that he's speaking to a stranger. So the Rav points out everyone involved in the Yosef story is not acting with a sense that they understand the consequences. Everything is being controlled by who's driving the steering wheel? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Continue on. Pasuk Yud Ches. Go to, okay, so now the brothers, so he sends them off. He's told to do what? Bring back a report. But now the brother, and so he meets this man, and the man sends him on to Dotan. Take a look. Ayiru oto meirachok. Who saw whom? Vayiru oto meirachok. The brothers saw from
Far.
that just in a distance. Do you think it's just a description? Vayiru oto meirachok. What does meirachok mean?
I think that feeling him.
What does merachok mean? Merachok doesn't only mean, yes, of course, literally means they see him from afar coming. What else does it mean? That's correct. They were emotionally distanced from him. Vayiru otom merachok. They weren't able to identify with him except in this terrible enmity that agreed, that's hostility that existed. In these three words, we have the whole mindset of the brothers towards Yosef. They always felt apart from Yosef. Vayiru otom merachok. There, remember, there was the question number 2. Question number 1 was that the Rav wanted to raise when you read this is what's Yaakov's mindset? So what's the answer? What's Yaakov's mindset? He's not in control. He's not in control. The whole story is telling you Yaakov was not in control. Correct? Now, the next question that the Rav dealt with in the opening comments was, what's the mindset of the brothers that they are so determined to kill Yosef? Why could they not see Yosef for whom he was? Why? What was it? They rejected his intention. The Torah is telling you via the pasuk, they see him from a distance. That wasn't his intention. What did he answer the ish, the anonymous person? Ma ata mivakesh, right? Isn't that what they said? Ma tivakesh. What are you looking for? Ma means what? Not who. Ma means what? And what does he answer? I'm not looking for a what. I'm not interested in a what. I'm interested in I'm looking for my brothers. I would like to, if you will, reunite with them. Were they willing to listen to that? No. Otom merachok. He had intentions of soothing things out. Let's iron it out. Let's work it out. I acted stupidly. I got you jealous, right? 100%. I shouldn't have shared my chalamot, my dreams with you, but I did. I caused a lot of problems. I understand. Were they willing to even listen? What's the Torah text telling you? They weren't even willing to listen. They created a barrier. They created a distance. They could not relate to him. They thought of him as different. They could not see that Yosef was a very special young man. There was only one person who knew that. Who was that? Yaakov. Yaakov, the only one that saw that he had tremendous talents, that he was capable of doing things, was Yaakov. What did they see? They saw in their heads the boy of the not only that, the boy of the coat of many colors. To them, if Yosef had any beauty, it was all superficial. They saw Yosef totally superficial. Only their father was able to understand that Yosef was blessed with enormous talent, with enormous refinement, with enormous strength. Only Yaakov realized that his son Yosef was blessed with the gift of being a visionary. He had dreams. Only Yaakov, because how do I know that? Because when the story said, go back to Pasuk page 200, his brothers, Pasuk Yud Aleph. The brothers were jealous. The Aviv Shamares Hadavar. But the father waited. His father, well, how does he translate it? He says, the father kept the matter in mind. That's even not, it's not catching it. The Aviv Shamares Hadavar. His father was waiting for the moment where the dreams would come true. He understood. Yaakov understood. This is not a superficial young man. They looked at him and they saw a superficial young man, right? Yaakov is the one who saw a deeply spiritual soul, a prophetic nature. The brothers saw something just the opposite. They saw a handsome, very handsome young man. They're not blind. They realize the Torah tells us, the text tells us that Yosef was striking. He's striking in his beauty. He was handsome. But go take a look at Perek. Rashi says it, Perek Lamed Zayin Pasuk Beis. Let's take a look in Rashi in Pasuk Beis. It says, that what did he do? What did Yosef do constantly? Yosef was interested in his beauty, right? He was constantly combing his hair. I'm trying to find the puzzle. Okay, it doesn't matter. But Rashi says he was constantly pampering himself, caring for his looks. That's what Rashi quotes the Medrash. That he's pampering and caring for himself. He was the one who people didn't totally appreciate who he really was. Yosef's destiny was always that people didn't understand who he was. The Rav also notes, even after his death, they didn't understand who he was. The embalmers in Egypt turned him into a frozen mummy, and they closed the coffin, for no one recognized who he really was, the Rav said. That was his destiny. Nobody understood. His brothers didn't understand him. The world didn't understand him. Yosef is whose child? Rachel. Rachel is the hidden one. Rachel hides her real personality, right? People don't understand Rachel. Even her own husband didn't understand her totally, right? Rachel, Yosef is a one who is different than the rest. Leah is, you can read her like a book. Leah, you see the eyes are tearing. You see everything about her. Everything is on her face. She's upset. You can read it off her face. Rachel, you don't know. Rachel, she's going to give the secrets to her sister. You would never have known. She has a poker face. She doesn't show it. Yosef is whose child? Rachel. Yosef is the hidden one. They see a beautiful person, and what do they see? Superficiality. What does Yaakov see? Oh, my son, Aviv Shamaras Hadavar. He says, this is Rachel's child. There's depth to this one. There's depth that you don't see, that you're not paying attention to. But the brothers, Nerachok, they're not willing to look at it. They're only seeing superficiality. Wait 2 seconds.
I just wanted to point out the Rashi you were looking for. I found
Good, fantastic. Yes, it's there. It's right. Hunar. He's the one who's acting as the Rashi quotes the Medrash. He's curling his hair, right? He's making sure that he looks great. He's looking at the mirror all the time. That's what Rashi said. That's what they see. What does Yaakov see? Yaakov sees something. Yes, he's very beautiful, but he has a very special soul. He has his mother's soul, and they don't realize it. And nobody does. Nobody does. You get a sense of he's very special. Paro eventually sees he's very special, right? Everybody who meets him sees he's very special, but they don't understand him. They don't understand him. Go continue on. Pasuk Yud Ches. Okay, so now what happens? Right? And even before they come close to him, what are they thinking? Can kill him. Vayomru ish el achiv. One says to the other. Who's the one says to the other? He has 10 brothers. Okay, how many are going to be involved in the sale? 9. Reuven's not there and Binyamin's not there. Okay, 9 brothers are going to be involved. But what do they say? Vayomru ish el achiv. One says to the other. Continue. What did they say? Hine balach halamot. Oh, here's the owner of the dreams. What should have they said? Rav Soloveitchik says, you got to read this very carefully. They don't say, Hine bal kitonet pasim. Here's the owner of the coat of many colors. That's not what they say, which would indicate what?
They were jealous of the father's relationship.
If it had said, Bal kitonet pasim, here comes the one who Abba spoiled. Here comes the one who got the coat that none of us got, right? That's not what it says. So what do they realize? What do they realize about Yosef? He's not just, as the Rav says, and I quote him, he says, they realize he's not a dim-witted person. Those were the words of the Rav, a dim-witted person. He's not. If you think, if he was just Baal Kitonet HaPasim, okay, dad spoiled him. That's a dim-witted person. He has nothing. They realize it down deep. They realize what about Yosef? That he is unique He is talented. They know this. With Yosef sharing his dreams, the hatred of the brothers towards him was increased. Why? Because they were, what are you dreaming about? Who dreams? A person who has a vision. He's the one who dreams. We see this in the text. That's why it's saying it this. Rather, they refer to him as the dreamer. This bothered them more than the fact that their father gave him a coat that they didn't receive. By calling him the dreamer, they knew very well that he was not a usual person. He's gifted. They knew that. He's highly talented. They knew that. He's bright. They knew that. He was the top of his class. They knew that, right? They knew it all. They looking at the brother, yes, they convinced themselves he's superficial. But deep down, what is the pasuk telling you? The one who's coming is the Bala Halamot. Oh, they knew he's a gifted, highly talented, highly bright. He's a visionary, he's a leader, he's an innovator. Yosef possessed, and they knew this down deep. They didn't want to admit it, but they knew it. Yosef possessed a prophetic spark, and they knew it. They knew it. And this was what bothered the brothers more than anything else. And what are they trying to squelch? This capability of Yosef with the prophetic spark. They want to squelch it. But prophecy can't be squelched. The prophet can't be quieted down. We know that from Yirmiyahu. They tried, Klal Yisrael tried, the most oppressed and abused Navi as Yirmiyahu was thrown into the pit. But you can't keep a prophet from speaking. Prophecy is an overwhelming force that cannot be suppressed, no matter how much man wants it to be suppressed. By the way, the prophet sometimes doesn't want to be the prophet. Don't we know that? Of course. The most famous, Yonah. Yonah doesn't want to be the prophet. I don't want to carry this message. I don't want it. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim in Chelik Beis, Perek Lamed Zayin 37 describes, you know what prophecy is? He calls it a masa. What's a masa? A burden. The prophet carries a burden on his shoulders. He may very well not want to impart it. The prophet has no choice but to impart it because God has appointed him. The message must be imparted no matter how much the prophet wants to or doesn't want to. Often sharing the prophetic vision puts the prophet in great danger, right? Like Yirmiyahu puts him in great danger. People try and they want to stop the prophet from speaking, but the prophet has to articulate the message. Yet the burden of prophecy will not let the prophet rest. He must impart the message and repeat it, what he heard from God, whatever the consequences. So who's the Bala Chalamot? The prophet. Yosef has a prophecy. The way the Rav brilliantly describes it is that, do you know what the argument between the brothers is in that in our first Aliyah, where he shared his dreams? What it sounds like, what the sheaves, my sheaves are, your sheaves are bowing down to mine, the cosmos are bowing down to me, right? Two different dreams. The Rav explained beautifully. There was a major disagreement between the brothers and Yosef. And that has ramifications to this very day, the Rav says. There's constant tension within Klal Yisrael. Do we have a vision to see that we have to be able to conquer the society that we live in, and we have to understand the society we live in, or do we isolate ourselves? The brothers said, we isolate ourselves. We stay as shepherds. Excuse me, they were shepherds. What was he dreaming about? Farming. How could he be dreaming? They go, oh, we're not farmers. We're shepherds. Shepherds have no idea. He's dreaming farming. They're dreaming shepherds. They say, what are you dreaming about? Something that's not our reality. And Yosef, according to Rav Soloveitchik, was telling them, you're not really realizing you're not going to be shepherds for very long. You're not going to be able to continue being shepherds. You're not seeing what's happening on the street. You're not realizing what's happening in the world. You're not reading the news correctly. Things are changing. Are you willing to, I'll take it one step further. Are we willing to confront technology, or are we going to hide in our base medrash without dealing with technology? Well, we have differences of opinion, don't you? Are we going to isolate ourselves from the world, or are we going to take our Torah into the street? And that was the argument, according to Rav Soloveitchik. Rav Soloveitchik spoke beautifully. He says he always, and by the name, his name, what was Rabbi Soloveitchik's name? Yosef. Yosef Dov. Yosef Dov, right? Yosef. He realized Yosef represents the one who's willing to do what? To engage the world around him and respond accordingly. His brothers want to remain shepherds. Shepherds, there's no tension. You go out with your sefer and you wait, and the sheep go on their own, and you sit down under the tree and you learn. It's a very peaceful way of life. That's not farming. Farming is not the peaceful way of life at all. It's difficult, and you're dependent upon the rain, and you're dependent upon the weather, and you're dependent upon, right? You're dependent upon a lot of things. It's a totally different lifestyle. He's also, what's the second tree? The cosmos. Are we going to conquer the world or not? Are we going to contribute to the world or not? How are we going to relate to the world? Is science going to be our enemy, or is science going to be our friend? How are we going to engage with the world? Oh, till this very day, this is a big argument, isn't it? Okay, that's what's happening here, according to Rav Soloveitchik and the brothers. So what do they see? Altome Rachok, they can't relate to him. They're not willing to, there's tension here, it's complex. On the one hand, they see him merachok, they see him only as superficial. On the other hand, down deep, what do they have to admit? He is special. Well, but we got to get rid of him because we don't like his message, right? So they try. Do they succeed? No, they don't succeed. The sin of the brothers, as Soloveitchik says, was they tried so hard to block Yosef's visionary power. They tried to squelch his prophetic spark, and that they didn't want to hear. And the story that we're reading is that tension between Yosef and his brothers. All that starts because Yaakov sends him to find his brothers. From where? Emek Hebron. Either in the valley, the eights of the one who's buried in Hebron, or he walks down the mountain. On the top of the mountain, you have a vision. No, Me'emek. On the bottom, you have no vision. Somebody else has the vision. Who's the one standing on top of the mountain? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're on the Emek, right? You're at the bottom. So the whole story that we see is he's being sent into this valley of trouble. We think it's trouble, but it's really the beginning of the destiny of the Jewish people unfolding, right? So you see who's in control? HaKadosh Baruch Hu's in control. Not anyone involved in the story of Yosef. Nobody is in control. Nobody is in control of the story of Yosef. I'll give you one step further. Yosef, later on in this parsha, what happens to Yosef? He gets accused of, he gets accused of living with his boss's wife, right? What would be the logical response of the husband? Of course, he doesn't kill him. First of all, he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe it. Yeah, he knows his wife. He knows his wife. He knows his wife, but he doesn't kill him. He doesn't kill him. He also acts compulsively. Everybody that deals with Yosef acts compulsively. Totally. If you think about it, Paro hands him the whole government, except my crown. What are you talking about? Except my seat. Huh? That's pretty compulsive. Yosef, when you're dealing with Yosef, you're dealing with People that are not in control, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's in control. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes sure that it works, right?
I have a question.
Yes, one and then yes.
Sorry,
Okay,
it's
go ahead.
really what you just brought up. Joseph says that he recognized his.
Does the prophet know that he is a prophet? Yes, the prophet knows that he's the prophet. Yes, yes, the prophet has to know that he's the prophet. yeah. Yes, 100%. He held ground. He held the ground. They might act compulsively, but yeah, no, Yosef is determined. Tremendous. Remember, Rachel is determined. Rachel is determined. But you don't see it. In other words, he hides. He's a complex figure, which he has to be.
This is why maybe we call him Baal HaChalomot, because
Yes, Baal. He's in control of that. He realizes. Yeah.
Also dreams are not always reality.
Yeah.
So
You have to turn them into reality.
So he sort of maybe
Yeah.
also sees things in the fog or something.
Yeah, the Navi never sees, except Moshe Rabbeinu, the Navi never sees the prophecy clearly. It's a puzzle that the Navi then has to figure out. That is true. That the Rambam explains the difference between all the Nevi'im except Moshe. Moshe didn't see a puzzle. Moshe saw panim upon him. Moshe got perfect. I give it this way. Moshe received the message without any static whatsoever. He heard it clearly, perfectly. And the vision was as 2020 as it could be. All the other Nevi'im, they're static. You got to figure out what's being said. The vision is not clear. You got to figure out the puzzle and you got to put the pieces together. That's correct.
And they also had it in dreams.
Yes, yes, 100%. Moshe was standing still. Moshe did not have to collapse. The Rambam describes that the Nevuah was so powerful, the Masah, the heaviness, the burden, there's two meanings to that literally the Navi would collapse and fall asleep. He would not be able to stand. He would not be able to walk. Moshe could walk in the street and have a Nevuah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to him everywhere he went, and it didn't impact Moshe one iota. He was able to continue. He had this conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, panim upon him, but only Moshe. Only Moshe.
I have one more
Yeah.
question, if I may. And I'm not sure if you told me before. Right at the beginning, it says when Yaakov is sending him, said,
Yeah.
go and see your brothers, B'Shechem, Lecha v'Eshlechacha.
Yeah, I said so. I think
know, but it's like one word.
Yeah.
It's not the head of. It's the first, and this the second.
because he's not in control. I think that is alluding to this very idea that he's not in control. Yosef, you're not going to be in control. Yaakov's not in control, nor is Yosef in control. Who's in control? In this story, if I would ask you the following question after you've learned this aliyah, who's in control?
God.
And how does he represented in this story? Who in this story is in the controlling seat? Who's driving the ish? The ish. That's why the ish is not identified. That's why the ish represents the Malach Hashem, right? Right? You don't know who that ish is. And that's why it constantly is repeated. Okay? We'll pick up next
Wasn't
week.
Yitzhak still alive during all this? Yitzhak was not dead yet, right? I'm looking through. He didn't die yet. Because I understand he knew that he didn't get killed. He knew that
Right. Yes, the Medrash says so. That's the Medrash says so. Of the Avos, who lives the longest? Yitzchak. Yitzchak lives the longest. Yitzchak lives to 180, no?
He's still around.
Yaakov lives to 147. How old is Abraham? 175. Yeah. Right. Well, that's the Medrash. 100%.
But Yitzhak was still around, but knew nothing about all this.
We have a class next week, I hope.
Yeah, why not?
No, because
Oh, Hanukkah is just the opposite. You're supposed to learn Hanukkah. Hanukkah is not Purim. My father, Zipran Bracha, said, any boy found in the base Medrash on Purim, you know he is the Batlan of all times. A boy knows that on Purim, you're not in the base Medrash. Hanukkah, you're supposed to be in the base Medrash. Yeah. Okay, we'll pick it up next week.
Thank
Okay,
you.
my
Feel
pleasure.
better.
Thanks. I got through.
I know you did.